Michael J. White. Jay or Jai? Like, let's be real. Like, set the record straight.
It's Jai, unless
It's
you're just
Jai.
saying the initial.
Okay,
It's Jai.
no. We're not going to do the initial. We're going to
Yeah,
do the
okay.
full name, like it says right here. Actor and filmmaker Michael Jai White.
There it is.
Because disrespecting you it's dangerous.
Yes, it is. Yes.
He's got a new movie called Outlaw Johnny Black. It is out in theaters, only in theaters, September 15th, man. And I love this. Are you doing a exploitation trilogy? Is this what this is? The second film? And like, if we got Black Dynamite, now we got Outlaw Johnny Black.
Yeah, what I have is kind of a combination. It's a mashup of, it's a Westploitation in certain ways, but it's a conglomeration of a lot of things that I grew up on. I love the Western genre, and so I do homage to that. And I wanted to entertain, but also have a story to tell and a message to share.
Yeah, and I actually, for people who are like, "Oh my God, is it like Black Dynamite? Is it like Black Dynamite?" I love Black Dynamite. Everybody loves Black Dynamite. Some of it is like Black Dynamite, but I think the majority of it is not like Black Dynamite. I think that if you are following in the history of movies like Buck and the Preacher, or the stuff that you got from like Fred Williamson, or some of those actors, Melvin Van Peebles, you can't poke fun because it's like poking fun at an entire movement, and that stuff was too important to like totally discredit with just joke after joke after joke after joke. There's depth here. Not that there isn't with Black Dynamite, but it's a different tone. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but I basically do homage to several westerns. I mean, I've got like kind of breadcrumbs and just Easter eggs of a lot of things that you could probably see even in the trailer, to Terrence Hill, and to Mel Brooks, and just several others.
Did you grow up on
So,
that stuff, or is this something you? Yeah.
absolutely, I love westerns. I love the morality of westerns, the storytelling, and overall, I mean, there was a time in the '70s where you see a movie that you could watch over and over, and with your family, I might add, and get things out of every time you see it. That's what I wanted to do with this movie. There were movies like Uptown Saturday Night and Let's Do It Again, and things like that made you laugh and had messages, and you felt good afterwards. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to relive that with people my age and older. And I wanted to present that to a younger audience as well, in the same way I experienced it.
And you expect the audience to come from Black Dynamite, the Black Dynamite animated, the stuff that's tonally close, because that trailer feels tonally close to what you're going for. And then when I watch the film, I'm like, no, actually, there's some like that feels like the sugar that lets that like kind of gets you to the medicine to go down. And now I'm getting like a full story, and you're pushing storytelling more than you were doing in Black Dynamite. Again, not that it's like total gag filled on Black Dynamite, but like the ratio is different here.
Well, Black Dynamite was authentic to a particular type of movie, and that was the movies like The Shafts,
Jim
like
Kelly stuff.
Well, yeah, that kind of stuff. That was very much the intention of a Black Dynamite. This hypersexual, hyper violent storytelling of like the Mac and all those type of movies. Well, to do it right, you are being authentic to the Western part of this. And Westerns were steeped in that kind of storytelling, good guy, bad guy, or white hat, black hat type of thing. So this quite naturally will be at different things. There's a morality, there's a story of revenge and redemption, like you would see in a Western. So to do it right is to be authentic to the Western genre.
Right. I mean, in a lot of the more classic Westerns, we're talking 30s, 40s, 50s, the white and the black hat was kind of important to saying good guy, bad guy. But here, the good guy wears a black hat, and I think that stuff like started up with the spaghetti stuff in the '60s, and then when you got to the '70s, it was like, I'm not wearing a white hat. Like there's going to be some moral ambiguity here, and your character wrestles with the idea of revenge and being driven by revenge. And honestly, Geekscape is when the movie starts out, like there's not much more that he's got, but over the course of the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for you. And keep in mind, like I totally popped for some of these cameos, and I'm not going to spoil them here, Geekscapists. But it's when somebody tries to do something in a genre and pay homage to it, and if they do it too tongue-in-cheek, I feel like they're condescending it. And you're doing it with love here, and you clearly know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I have an absolute love for this, and a message that I really I live by, to be honest with you. And and so I like you said, this tasty medicine. That's really exactly the analogy. So yeah, we could laugh, we could be entertained, but we could dare I say, we could walk away with something. There's a little story that I can share with you that happened in the first screening of one of my test screenings. A Hollywood producer, left the screening, and he called me the very next day, and he said, because of your movie, I called my mother. I hadn't spoken to her in 8 years. There had been a rift between she and I, but because of your movie, it made me look at things differently, and I contacted her. And now we're getting together for the first time in 8 years. And when he told me that, I said, I really feel like I've done my job with this movie. For somebody like a producer, a Hollywood producer, that's
callous, too busy to like do the heart stuff.
Right. So if it could reach the heart of that person,
they melted him like the Grinch. You melted the Grinch's heart. He's like, Mom, let's make this quick. I'm losing money on this phone call, but I just wanted to say I just saw this movie, and there was a sermon scene, and it melted my heart. And I think it was the sermon scene. It was the sermon scene, wasn't it?
Well, I didn't ask him what particular scene it was. He said basically the movie. It made him think about, I guess probably a lot that you can even see in the trailer. There's a message of redemption and forgiveness, and holding on to things that can only hurt you, and letting it go is I think the key to healing. And so with a story like this, based on what the story was based on, because I crafted this story on Black Wall Street, which was one of the many tragedies in history where Black thriving towns were overrun by Klan and things of the sort, where we're looking at something that was pre-Tulsa, but I'm offering suggestions on how do we, knowing this history, knowing our history, how do we move on from that and take our rightful lives and our rightful trajectory to happiness, and prosperity.
And the Tulsa thing has been talked about a lot, and it's even in fandom with things like Watchmen, and I'm glad it became a part of the conversation again. And I'm glad people started being like, wait, this happened. And, so that, because it just shows the failure of the education system, that you don't even have to mobilize it to the degree that some of these states are doing with the erasing they're doing of history. And the tragedies that have happened to quote unquote build this country. It's got a loose leg. It's going to fall. Maybe it falls apart. I don't know. But the history is being deliberately ignored. And then pop culture comes in and like gets people to be like, wait, what happened in 1922? Like this less than 100 years ago? Like what happened? And Geekscape is, I mean, the speech at the end of the movie, I was kind of waiting for like, I'm like, oh man, as you're giving that speech at the end of the movie, the hurrah speech, like Geekscape is like, we've saved the day, we're gonna do these great things. There's a self-aware kind of sadness to it too, because America didn't do those things, and they did not have the backs of a lot of the people they built the country on. And they stepped in. Like, I think that Geekscape is kind of the coolest thing about the movie. I like the kicks, I like the action, I like the genre, but that stuff you're putting in the movie is some of my favorite stuff. I just had to say that, Michael J. When you're working with Byron, co-writing this stuff, and you guys worked on Black Dynamite again, and a lot of Black Dynamite folks are back for this one. Not our good friends James Liu and Simon Rhee, but like, what are they gonna do, right? Well, James went and moved to Vancouver, so
yes,
I do love him. How much of this stuff was intentionally in that first draft? Does that make sense? Like, did you guys come out of this with an energy and like, hey, we got a lot of goodwill from Black Dynamite, and I'm doing action movies. You did one with my friend Sean Piccinino, The Island, and Geekscape that's recently released. Like, you should go see The Island. It's badass. And Sean says hello, by the way. Sean loved working with you and your wife. He loved it. I was like, anything embarrassing you can tell me about Michael Jai. And he goes, hell no, you're gonna get me killed. No, he just said he loved working with you, and he's been on Geekscape. I love Sean. He's a sweetheart. How much of that stuff was in that first draft? How many of those layers that we're talking about was in that first draft, and how much of it did you say, hey, here's an opportunity of this, or so maybe through some of your research or refamiliarization with the films in the genre or outside the genre, did you start kind of populating the script and then ultimately the directing with this stuff?
It really was only one draft. I wrote it straight through. I started writing, and I tend to see everything, and even the way I write is I basically write my shot list. So it's kind of internal. It's not like I'm writing it for another director to shoot.
Of course.
So I pretty much I just went right straight through and wrote what I saw.
And how do you maintain that in the process of collaboration when somebody else wants to put different ingredients into the stew that you're in charge of? Does that make sense? Because obviously with artists, you want to leave room for people to be like, hey, I kind of see this performance kind of, what if I do this? Or when you start talking about the visual language of it, you talk to a DP, you start talking to, again, your co-writer, producer, like, well, how do you keep to that voice while respecting their contributions?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, how this turned out is that I just wrote it.
Right.
And the intention was, Byron and I were going to write it, but it was as it happened that we never really got together to do that. I ended up writing the whole script, and Byron pretty much did some of his own dialogue. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how we kind of did that together. But I pretty much wrote and structured the entire movie, and Byron offered some dialogue stuff on his character.
If they complain, is that where the martial arts comes in?
What's that?
If they complain or you guys have a disagreement about something you both see, that's the martial arts. That's where it helps.
No,
it helps to be like,
no. It's just like, yeah, I've got a lot of experience. I just, it's like, it's weird, but being an actor and director, imagine like, well, most directors, or even if you're directing an action movie, maybe the average director might have directed 3 or 5 movies. Well, I've been on the set of 70, and amassed all kinds of things from other action directors and just dramatic directors. So I tend to come with I kind of have a big kind of a big toolbox, and so me writing in the language of film and knowing what I'm going to shoot, I know I'm going to shoot the thing.
And for every film that you've been on, you've read that script, so the writing is there on top of the writing you've done.
There's a disconnect between the page and the person, and even the directors. A lot of times, if the writer is not the director, and sometimes they get on set and they don't know, they don't have their shot list. I'm like, I wrote the shot list, so I already see this thing.
Did Sean have a shot list? I'm just going to talk trash. Did Sean have a shot list?
I'm going to talk about that. I'm sure he did.
Right. Go see The Island and decide if Sean had a. I'm kidding. I like The Island. It's awesome, and I love Sean. Sean's still a
But I tend to completely know what I'm shooting, and even make up things on the fly. Like if you've seen the slap sequence or the action sequence against the the guys in that first scene,
mm-hmm.
Those sequences I created on the way to the set.
That's stressful.
Driving to the set. I've cut everything. I know what I'm going to shoot, and it's right here.
But what tools do you use? I mean, you get there, you write it all down so you can collaborate it with a DP and the choreograph it and tell the actors where it's blocking.
No, I know. Choreography.
If the team is big, how are you? If the team is so big, and I know it's an indie movie, but like the team's so big, how does that stuff not get away from you? Does it make sense? You can't be everywhere at once. You know what I'm saying?
No. I mean, believe me, I could do that right now. It's like I would say, I need the camera there. I need the camera here. This first guy, you're going to come at me from this angle. You're going to go right. Don't get any closer than this. And this is the cadence of these, of this movement. And so that's exactly what happened. Nobody knew the choreography. Nobody did. But till I got there. But it was a quick process because I've done this a lot. It's tantamount to saying, okay, what if I was a tap dancer or a dancer and I say, I'm going to do a tour jeté, then I'm going to do this or whatever, you're going to catch me from head to toe and action. And I'm the one doing it. Well, then it's pretty simple because keep me in frame. That's all you got to do.
You've worked with these collaborators, your stuntmen, the fellow actors so many times. And again, Geekscape is like, it feels like the family's back together on a lot of this stuff if you watch Michael Jai's movies. And that becomes an extension of yourself. So you're you're able to do that stuff efficiently, even on a budget. Like this is an indie movie. And again, Geekscape, as it comes out this on September 15th in theaters only. On an indie budget where it's all about, the schedule. You got to get that schedule. Like there's not a lot of wiggle room. And then you have almost not an improvised fight sequence, but a fight sequence that you have down, you know how to do, you're clipping through it. And then is there room to make improvements if you find an opportunity to be like, oh, what if you do? That's kind of like what you did. That's kind of cool if you maybe jump into that. Does that make sense? Like the stress level seems a little high on a indie budget to do this, and that's where your experience kicks in and all that.
Yeah. I've like literally, like if you think about the slap sequence, that's intricate. I seriously, nobody knew I was even going to shoot that.
You didn't shot list. You didn't floor plan it. Yeah.
Was that?
You didn't shot list or floor plan it or?
No, not at all. I had it in my head. Because I had the time to do it. If I didn't have the time, I wouldn't have shot it. So I knew the setups and I knew with Paul Logan, who was another martial artist, that he will get the timing. All we have to do is run it, and that's exactly what happened. So I know with stunt professionals. I know what to expect. You know, it's like if I had an actor that I do that would take all day. You know, they're not, you know, they're not necessarily skilled in that.
And is there an energy that conveys to screen when you say, hey, like, we're not going to overly rehearse this, we're not going to overly like shot list this, we're not going to overly choreograph it, we're just going to, I know you, you know me, we know like what the shot is. Like, there's an energy that doesn't get exhausted when you do that. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's a lot. Believe me, it's a lot shorter than the alternative. It's really short. Again, I use the dance reference. If you've done these dance moves several times, and you're going to be, and I'm being authentic to the '70s movie making, which is not a bunch of camera tricks. It's basically keep me in frame.
We got to get this done, right?
And I'm going to do it. You know, if you know some of my movies like Blood and Bone, keep me in frame. I'm gonna fight these 5 guys before this next cut. All you got to do is keep me in frame. And so that's infinitely easier to do than when someone can't do it in, like, so if you look at Flashdance, well, that's going to take a lot longer than showing Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, you know, who will perform in a full frame. But if Jennifer Beals doesn't know how to do that, you got to shoot Jennifer, the double, the feet, the hands. You have to create that in an editing room. Well, that's not how '70s movie making was. So it frees me up to do it pure.
That's kind of what I love about those Shaw brothers, like those Shaw movies, where it's almost like you're watching theater. The takes are so long, and it's about the dance, it's about the choreography, and it's not the MTV fight sequence. It's not any of that stuff. Does that stuff frustrate you? Like, clearly, like Geekscape this is one of the first Black actors to play a superhero on Geekscape right now. Like, this is maybe the first with Spawn. When you get into those bigger things, when there's effects and there's shots and does that stuff frustrate you as a performer? Because there's that chance that you're like, wait, what are we doing? Wait, what? None of this stuff is practical, and then you're cutting it up into a million shots. Or is there an advantage to that stuff as well as a performer?
Well, what happens is a lot of movies, since there are a lot of people who don't move exceptionally well, and so you have to create that in editing. But what happens is sometimes the editor starts to have this language of, I have to create it in the editing room.
Right, like you get the Van Damme triple take or something like that, right? Like you get the Van Damme triple take because it's like, the impact's cool, but let's add more impact by seeing it 3 times for different angles.
Right, you have to kind of, do that. But then they start treating even people who move exceptional that same way. Well, see, someone like Bruce Lee, he's in the editing room. He's making sure that the beauty of his kick is seen completely, and he's doing several things before there's a cut, right? I'll give you an example. Okay, one of the most widely recognized scenes in Raiders of the Lost Ark is when Indiana Jones he steps into frame. He's in frame, and in the background, there's a guy with a scimitar with this big sword in the crowd, swinging around. And Indiana Jones turns, shoots him, and then walks away. And it all happens on frame. Well, somebody could have shot a close-up of the gun, a close-up of the squib of the shot hitting the guy, a close-up of the guy falling, and there are editors that would cut all that together. Believe me, we wouldn't be talking about that scene if that happened.
They'd intended that scene.
Yeah,
they'd intended for it to be longer.
What's that?
Hadn't they intended? I mean, the famous story is that they intended for that scene with the versus the scimitar to be an actual fight. When they got to it, they were like, "Dude, let's just shoot, just shoot him."
Exactly. But that scene it has so much character because it happened all in one shot, right? If they cut it like the way I just said, we wouldn't be talking about it right now, because the beauty of it is that it all occurred in that one shot. So what I'm saying is that when you sometimes the beauty of seeing the full thing happen is there's no readjusting our minds. We're experiencing something like fully. And so with fight scenes like the Shaw Brothers, we're watching this magnificence and that's uninterrupted. So with like say the fight scenes, what I'm saying is like I'm directing the movie, so I know it's not going to be interrupted. It takes a long time for most fight scenes because they're gonna shoot all these different inserts that I'm not going to use because I'm going to show me kicking four times and two guys at the same time. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make this a fight scene that the action is created in the editing room. No, it's not going to happen. So that's what I'm saying. So it becomes something that's easier for me, and the action stuff occurs quicker because I got like great stunt people, and even the saloon fight that probably was done in half the time of a normal saloon fight.
You have a ton of actors and a ton of resets on the props. When you start breaking stuff, if you can't do it in a few takes, like the art department's going to mutiny against you. And you guys did.
I have a lot of extra breakable stuff that we never used.
That's great.
I have a whole storage thing of it. So if anybody needs breakaway tables and bottles, I've got a whole bunch of them.
You're hinting at a Outlaw Johnny Black sequel, is what you're doing. Because why not use that stuff? Let's go.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
I started this up as talking about this, and I actually don't think it's accurate. I think that these movies, and again, Geekscape is like, I love Black Dynamite. I love Michael J. If I see you in a movie, like I saw the sudden death. Like, is that a spinoff? Is it a sequel? Like, I love the Van Damme, like John Hyams or Peter Hyams sudden death. And I love seeing that stuff. So like when I saw that you were doing something that was kind of in the similar universe or this, I was like, I'm watching that. So I love watching your films and I love watching the performances. Like you say, like, and our friends like James Liu tell me a million stories about martial arts performance and choreography. And I love hearing these stories because I actually think that it doesn't have to be a martial arts or an action sequence to apply. I think if you do that with a dramatic scene and you chop it to heck, the actors are like, hey man, I gave it to you in a fluid expression of energy in the performance, and there's an intensity in the building of my performance. Why'd you cut it off at the knees by cutting to the bedside? Why'd you cut it off? And I'm not talking about one-ers, because one-ers to a degree start being a little more about the director than the substance, right? Than the subject. And sometimes the one-ers frustrate me sometimes because people are like, oh, let's do it in a one-er. It's like, why? Why? So you can put yourself in the movie? If you want to put yourself in the movie, be an actor. Right? Directors you watch Scorsese, he doesn't do fancy. I mean, you can talk about that one that he does in the famous one of going into the club and all that stuff. But if you watch the one-ers in Taxi Driver, it's a pan of the camera. It's a shift. It's about the intensity of the performance. And so I think that the stuff we're talking about with martial arts, I think it applies to dramatic acting as well. Just Robert De Niro with a payphone, right? So again, Geekscape is, I don't think that this is the middle of a trilogy. This might be a whole new franchise. That's a long way for me to be in my final question, plans for that?
Well, I mean, it depends on the response, I think. So I don't ever want to get ahead of myself. So I have something in my back pocket for a sequel, but let's really make a statement with this one first.
Okay, Geekscapers, you have your mission. It's Outlaw Johnny Black. It is in theaters September 15th. It's only in theaters, Geekscape. So you're gonna want to watch, and you're gonna want to watch this in the theater, okay? Because you're gonna want to watch these performances on a big screen. Remember when I told you about Triple R, and you were like, Triple R, never heard of it, and then like you went to watch it on Netflix, and you're like, yeah, it's great, and then you went to see it in the theater, and they were like gonna rip the seats out and like hit each other, like people were going crazy. Remember when I told you to watch The Raid, and you were like, great, and you went to see it in the theater, and people were losing their minds, like the two hypest of all time theaters I've ever been in, The Raid, that first The Raid movie, and Triple R. And so Geekscapists, if I'm telling you to watch this movie in a theater and it's only available in a theater, that's what you're going to do. Okay. Don't wait for this thing to hit VOD or whoever is buying it. Okay. Michael J, thank you so much for being on Geekscape. And we're going to send people to see it, and we're going to get that sequel going. All right.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael J. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.